Hi there, I'm Cotton and welcome back to CottonHammer. It's time for another Puddle dive where we learn about the less famous chapters in service of the Emperor. Today that will be on the Star Phantoms. Grim-faced sentinels standing watch to protect the Imperium against countless horrors, alone and forgotten. So, without any further faffing about, let's get into this puddle. So, who are the Star Phantoms? The Star Phantoms are a loyalist chapter that was founded in the 38th millennium during the 23rd founding. This founding is also called the Sentinel Founding, because its main purpose was to create Astartes chapters to bolster the defenses of the Imperium's borders. It is unknown who exactly their parent chapter is. Those records have been lost, and the Star Phantoms themselves don't like to keep records, and even less to share them with anyone else. But some suspect that they are descendants of the Dark Angels. Though the Dark Angels deny this,
I've never met this man in my life.
And the Star Phantoms themselves don't seem to care at all. The Star Phantoms are very secretive and like to isolate themselves. Not a big surprise, since they were basically left to fend for themselves for centuries against the horrors of the galactic fringes. During this time they developed a cult within their chapter that revolves around death and martyrdom. They don't really value any life, including their own, as they see it as just a short stage, pre-game before the real bender, if you will. The only thing that matters is not how you lived, but how you died, with a warrior's death being the apex of afterlife bragging rights. Due to this ingrained religious dogma, the chaplains are held in even higher regard as usual, leading the very extensive funeral processions. This all sounds pretty standard for isolated Astartes chapters, since most of them are a bit cuckoo.
Do you hear the voices too?
So you might be inclined to just go, good for them, and move on. But there's the problem. They are so convinced of their cult's teachings that they extend that belief to all other Imperial forces as well, no matter if they want it or not. The Emperor has allowed them to live another day, and they're about to make it everyone's problem. This has resulted, more often than once, in massive collateral damage among civilians during their operations, and also in high casualties among allied military forces, including other Astartes. This has given the Star Phantoms a bad reputation, for some reason. They also don't like to involve themselves with other Astartes, not even the Death Watch, preferring their isolation. They still send a few marines over, but just to get Inquisition off their backs. But while there, they are pretty much the weird lonely kid that sits alone during lunch. It also doesn't help that they die faster than average in the Death Watch service. Being in a death cult doesn't help when a brute lord is storming towards you and you just keep standing there while the rest of your kill team bolts for cover.
I've fallen and I can't get up!
Anyway, in battle, the Star Phantoms can be seen in ash-white armor, with no trim or secondary colors, except for highlighting details like the crest in gold. Their chapter symbol is a very neat sand timer, with each half represented by a stylized skull, to further represent their death cult beliefs. They do not have a favorite combat tactic per se. They will gladly use ambushes, frontal assaults and other tactics. The only thing that matters to them when picking a tactic is how much firepower they can shove in the enemy's face, since they very much love close quarters combat with heavy weapons. The option that allows for the most dakka in the smallest space possible is the best option, though they have shown a particular liking for drop-pod assaults, because that way they don't have to drag their heavy weapons all the way to the enemy. In fact, they love dakka so much that they even deviate from the standard Codex Astartes organization, fielding 3 Devastator squads per battle company rather than the usual 2. On top of that, they have a rather large stock of melta and plasma weapons. They are so addicted to blowing stuff up that they don't even mind if they blow themselves up. Now, that's dedication. Apart from the massive amount of heavy weapons they bring along, their favorite vehicles seem to be both Vindicators, because those make the biggest booms, and Land Raiders. Again, because they really love firing the heavy weapons, but hate dragging them around. Also of note, even in battle do the chaplains play a larger role, each company having their very own mortuary chaplain on top of the regular chaplain, to read Battle Brothers their last rites when they're getting devoured by Haruspecs.
The Lord bless you and keep you.
Now to cover their history. I will also include their most famous battles in here to make the whole thing more coherent. Like mentioned before, they were founded in the 23rd founding in the 38th millennium. From that point they were sent to the galactic north in the Segmentum Obscurus to keep Xenos Gribblies in check, and also to keep the space lanes safe. Well, as safe as a space lane can be, I guess. Their homeworld used to be the mausoleum world of Harkonef, and it isn't a stretch to imagine that this is where they got their whole death cult thing from. Apart from guarding the borders, the Star Phantoms also took the battle to Xenos homeworlds. How did that go? Well, many Xenos species went completely extinct to the point we know nothing about them. So I think it's safe to say they did a good job. The most remarkable battle during this period was the Massacre of Cormac, against the foul Xenos known as the Crave. I think from that title alone you can guess how that went for the Xenos.
Uh-oh.
The battle took place in year 718 of Millennia 39. The Crave had been besieging Cormac since more than 2 centuries by that time. Eventually the Imperium figured out that Cormac wasn't a lost cause and sent the Star Phantoms to deal with it. The Star Phantoms launched an entire chapter fleet at the Crave's nest traps that were blockading the planet, quickly destroying them. After that they launched a full drop pod assault. The Crave had nowhere to run and their support in orbit had fled, so they were quickly mopped up by the Astartes. However, when the defenders threw open their gate to celebrate their saviors, it became apparent that this would not be a happy end. The decades of Xenos influence had taken their toll, and the defenders became corrupted. All because someone couldn't keep it in their pants. Dave. The psychic abilities of the Crave didn't help either, but I still blame Dave. But yeah, the entire population was massacred. Oh, that's why it's called the Massacre of Cormac. Anyway, the merry tour of exterminating everything with more than 2 arms, eyes or balls was interrupted when the entire chapter was recalled in the year 101 of Millennia 40, when orcs kept frantically attacking their homeworld Harkonef. The orcs were basically throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Harkonef. Wargs, ramships, squigs, you name it. A lot of the orcs were obliterated by the minefields and orbiting stations around Harkonef. Then the entire Star Phantoms fleet arrived, and it was pretty much an orc shooting gallery for the Star Phantoms. Though the orc fleet was so massive that the space battle took 6 days. It took so long mainly because the orcs absolutely refused to retreat. But as soon as the last few orcs were scattered, the actual threat emerged. See, the orcs weren't really attacking per se. They were trying to get away from something else. And Harkonef was simply in the way. And orcs have very limited problem solving skills, so you can see why they just attacked the thing in front of them. That something they were fleeing from had just emerged from a massive warp rift at the system's edge. A massive Harut migration. In case you don't know, the Harut are these weird xenos that can control time and space. They are very limited in number, But when they migrate, yeah, then this happens. The Star Phantoms mounted a staunch defense, but due to the Harut's influence and the warp rifts, the fleet was almost entirely wiped out, and the planet was soon to follow, as it was being slowly ripped apart when the Harut landed on the planet itself. The Star Phantom's chapter master saw no further hope in this battle and ordered an evacuation, trying to save as many of the relics as possible. They fled to their last remaining battle barge, the Memento Mori, because of course that's what they'd name it. Though a lot of Star Phantoms refused to leave their planet and preferred to die a warrior's death defending it. We already established that this is kinda their fetish. In the end, only a handful of escort ships and that single battle barge remained of the fleet, with 2/3 of their chapter wiped out. Though, on the sunny side, they now have the dubious honor of facing a Harut migration head on and surviving. After having their homeworld destroyed, they needed quite a few years to rebuild their chapter, becoming fleet-based during this period. Though, when the Macarian Crusade was launched, the Star Phantoms joined its ranks to drive the light of the Imperium deeper into the unknown regions of space, and exterminate some filthy xenos along the way. Though this wasn't as glorious as they had probably hoped, since even Lord Solar Macarius quickly figured out that they had to keep the Star Phantoms far away from his other troops. With the death of Lord Solar Macarius, however, they got involved with the shit show that was the Macarian heresy, to the point that the Inquisition has investigated them after they almost wiped out an entire other Space Marine chapter and an entire Imperial Guard regiment during the battle on Thoth. Since the Macarian heresy was basically a massive free-for-all battle royale, it was kinda hard to tell who were traitors and who were loyalists to the Imperium. The Inquisition, however, deemed them to not be heretics and cleared them of any wrongdoing, though they did get a stern finger waggling and a warning to not do that again. Probably got let off easy because of that other chapter I mentioned. Those were the Marines malevolent, and screw those guys. The worst thing about that ordeal is that the Star Phantoms left enough of those bastards alive that they were able to rebuild the chapter. Like, sure, I mentioned that the Star Phantoms also cause huge amounts of collateral damage, but they at least think that they are doing the people a favor by blowing them up and calling it a warrior's death. The Marines malevolent do it cause they think they're too good to care about the lives of anyone else besides their own. Anyway, a few years later they would join in the late stage of the Badab War on the loyalist side, leading the attack on the Palace of Thorns, the absolute seat of power of the Tyrant of Badab, Huon Blackheart. The Star Phantoms had rebuilt quite a bit of their former strength, acquiring a substantial fleet and even a second battle barge, the Pale Wrath. It's reported by all parties that the Star Phantoms fought exceptionally fearless and brutal. A captain of the Star Phantoms, 9th Company, even being the one to strike Huon down with a blast from his combi Melta.
Gotcha, bitch! Nani?
Though he was swiftly slain by Huon's elite bodyguard moments after firing the shot. For their actions during the battle, they were rewarded with overlordship of the Badab sector, at least what was left of it. In the Archaean system nearby, they found a nice ice moon called Jacta, which they selected as their new homeworld. A welcome privilege of overlordship, since nobody has time to waste waiting for the Administratum to get their asses in gear and send some construction crews over. The Star Phantoms decided that their ancient battle barge, the Memento Mori, should retire and serve as a new fortress monastery. They landed it on Jacta, where it eventually became landlocked completely by ice and glaciers.
Behind the rocks!
Keep going. You're good. You're good. You're good. And stop. Don't worry, Captain. We'll buff out those scratches.
Making the foundation for the new fortress monastery. After that, they were of course involved in the Carthago Crusade. This crusade was necessary because the Badab War had caused so much damage to the entire sector that no orcs were tootin' and lootin' all over it. But the direct assault just 2 years earlier on the Palace of Thorns had caused severe losses, which weren't replenished yet, so they could only spare their 5th company. A little over a decade later, they would be involved with the scourging of Karak, in year 926 of Millennia 41. Karak was an agri-world that supplied food for the Badab sector, and now also for the ongoing Carthago Crusade. Having had enough of being worked to death, they took up arms against the Imperium. Later it turned out that a Chaos cult of Khorne was involved in riling them up. Though it's kinda telling that the Imperium only noticed when Captain Calfax of the Star Phantoms and his 5th company arrived to resupply, and didn't fail to notice that the local farmers seemed kinda grumpy. After figuring out what happened, they launched a direct assault at the cult's leadership, and that was pretty much that. Somehow, being really angry doesn't help against a full company of Astartes. Go figure. While that is the last recorded battle, it's no secret to the Imperium that the Star Phantoms have a long and glorious battle history. But due to their isolation during their time in the Galactic North, and then the destruction of their home planet, most of those records are now lost. It matters not for the Star Phantoms. Now for known members of the Star Phantoms. We have Chapter Master Omadon Tiresias. He was a Chapter Master that had to make the difficult call to abandon their homeworld and flee to live to fight another day, which in the end turned out to be absolutely the right call. We also have Captain Calfax, who we just mentioned leading the 5th company during the Carthago Crusade and crushing the cult at Karak. And of course, Captain Zrukal Androcles. He was the captain that shot Huron with the combi melter. Then we have a couple of known Star Phantoms that served with the Deathwatch. Most notably is Brother Merkur. He was slain while defending Watch Fortress Eriok, defending his battle brothers against overwhelming odds guarding the fortress' main portal. He is honored to this day by both the Star Phantoms and the Deathwatch for his great sacrifice. We also know of Brother Festarin and Brother Tula. Both were killed fighting the Tau. Tula was blown the fuck up by an, at that point, experimental Storm Surge battlesuit, and Festarin was torn to shreds by some fucked up Kroot that had eaten too many Tyranids and had started to mutate accordingly. There's also a gaggle of Star Phantoms that are technically named but have no lore about them. So I'll just slide those across the screen while we talk about the current operational status of the Star Phantoms. At the moment the status of the Star Phantoms is unknown. But since it's their entire thing to isolate themselves, that doesn't say much. Though it's not good news that they haven't been blessed with Primaris reinforcements yet. At least not recorded. But let's be real. Either they are still fighting the good fight, or they have died in a glorious battle. And if anything, the Star Phantoms with their death cult would consider both an absolute win.
I see this as an absolute win.
So, that's it for today on our ash-covered friends. Did I mention that the paint they use for the armor contains the ashes of fallen brothers? Well, I did now. Also, I want to quickly mention that there is an actual canon conflict regarding the Star Phantoms. The Imperial armor books say that they have been founded in the 38th millennium, but the novel, Flesh of Cretacia, mentions that they fought alongside the Flesh Terrors just 100 years after the conclusion of the Horus Heresy. In my personal opinion, I put more value into the extensive Imperial armor book over a novel that just mentions the Star Phantoms. My guess is that the novel just confused them with another chapter, or just put in a random chapter that they remembered existing without checking. Anyway, if you liked the video, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing so you don't miss out on new puddle dives in the future and to make me feel better about myself. Thanks for watching and see you all next time. Cheers!